right. If you can hear the sound of my voice, I'd love to invite you in. Love to invite you to take a seat. We've got quite a few people come out. Thank y'all for joining us. If you're joining us online, love to welcome you to that too. I know we had a few little technical difficulties, but thanks for hanging with us if you're online. I'd love to ask y'all to come on in, have a seat, and we'll get started. This is awesome. What a great turnout. Thank y'all for coming. My name is Ann Lowry. If I haven't had the privilege of meeting you yet, I serve as the executive director of Tennessee Stands. We're one of, if not the largest, grassroots conservative movements in this state. We are an organization that seeks to educate, and that's why we're here tonight. We have a desire to educate everyone in Tennessee about the 3 Republican candidates. So thank you for coming to do that. Before I go any further, we do actually have a few candidates in the room, and I'd love to highlight them. So if you are running for office, whether it's in Hamilton County or another county in Tennessee, would you please stand? And I'd like to go around and share a little bit about each of you real quick. So if you stand up, if you are running for office here in Tennessee or in Hamilton County. So we'll start over here. Can you introduce yourself and be loud? Yep, so House Representative for District 27, Michelle Renaud, a dear friend to Tennessee Stands and to myself personally, and my personal representative. So, all right, Sabrina.
I'm Sabrina Daniel, and I'm running for the Hamilton County School Board in District 8. I am born again Christian, I'm a conservative, obviously a Republican. I've taught for 17 years, and I'm looking forward to serving as a servant leader on the board.
Thank you, Sabrina. Running for school board in Hamilton County. We've got Cindy Fain in the back.
Hey, I'm Cindy Fain. I'm running for School Board District 6, which is Red Bank, North Shore, Stewart Heights, Hill City, in that area.
So another school board candidate for Hamilton County. All right, I'll move over here to Tina Benkaiser.
Hi, I'm Tina Benkaiser. I'm the current State Executive Committee member for Senate District 11. So if you're in Bill Watson's Senate District, anywhere from Signal Mountain to Sonny Daisy, Hickson, Udawa, Red Bank, you're in my district, I would love to have your vote one more time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tina. So Tina is running as, if you were able to hear her, as an SEC member. These are crucial roles in our state with our state Republican Party. So to have conservative leadership there is an enormous blessing. And then last but not least, I think you traveled the farthest to be here.
Yeah, hey, I'm Will Bolton. I'm running for state representative for District 23, which is all of Benton County and then a portion of Monroe County. Running against an 8-year incumbent, and I think we're doing all right. Folks are ready for a change.
It's awesome. Thank you, Will. Thank you so much. That's awesome. So if you didn't hear Will, he is running for House Representative also, as well, a similar position to Michelle Renaud. So a few things I'd like to share real quick. The opportunity here is a forum. Forums are supposed to be and are intended to be an opportunity for candidates to present to you, the public, how they stand, what their voting record is, what their campaign contributions look like. So tonight, we have one representative, one candidate who answered the call from us. I wanted to go ahead and share with you and make it 100% public to you of how this came to be. So in March, I called Gary, if you know Gary Humble, our chair. I called him and I was like, hey, I've got this idea. How about we do a forum? He's like, okay, we haven't done that before, but try it. Let's just see what happens. So I started reaching out to the candidates. And I reached out to Marcia first, to Senator Blackburn, because I thought she probably has the busiest schedule coming back and forth from D.C. So I called her first. And I asked their campaign, would you be willing, if we could find a date that worked for you, would you be willing to come and participate in a gubernatorial forum with Tennessee Stands? And their feedback was no. So they would not be taking that opportunity. That it seems to be part of their campaign strategy, and that's their choice to do so. We see other candidates across the country take that same strategy. If you look into our history, I believe LBJ took that strategy. President Nixon took that strategy. We definitely saw President Biden take that strategy, and even Trump did it, right? Trump had his moments too, where he chose to not participate in some public forums, and that's okay. So then I reached out to Congressman Rose, same question. Would you please come and join us at a gubernatorial forum and put yourself in front of the people so we can hear from you directly? And their first response was, well, just check with Marcia and let us know. So sure, no problem. So I waited a few days because I already knew the answer. And I was like, please, Lord, come on, let's do this. And so when I let him know that she had chosen not to come, his team got back to me. And after bantering back and forth a little bit, trying to find a date, they just let us know that they did not have any date available up into July 17th, which is early voting. And that was mid-April. So maybe as a candidate, you don't have any free days between, looking ahead 3 months, there's no available days. So we'll just give him the benefit of the doubt on that one, maybe. So his team, unfortunately also said no. So then I called Representative Fritts and I said, hey, I'm going to do this forum. What do you think? Could you join us? And he said, any date, any time, I'll be there. So that's what we've got. And I think it's important that we're in a situation where we as the people, we have the power, right? That is a constitutional protected right. We have the power in our hands, and we choose who we give our power to. So we have 3 candidates that are looking at us saying, give us your trust. Give us the right and the ability to serve as your governor. And one of those candidates is here. One of those candidates is performing or attending town halls and making himself very public. The other 2 just have different strategies, and maybe those strategies work, right? Every Republican responds differently to different strategies, but we have a candidate tonight who wants to speak to people, and I'm very, very much looking forward to having a conversation with him. So before I get started, a quick thank you we had 19 co-sponsors of this organization. So if I call your name as an organization and you're here, please stand up. Activate Hamilton, Citizens United of Athens, Conservative Club of Tellico, East Tennessee Freedom, Empowered Severe, Freedom Women of Tennessee, Hamilton County Republican Party, Knoxville Nobility, Lawrence County Republican Party, Polk United, Republican Women of White County, Roan for Liberty, Tennessee Citizens for State Sovereignty, Tennessee Constitutional Grassroots Coalition, Tennessee Liberty Whip, Tennessee MAHA State Council, Tennessee Republican Women's Alliance, and the Tennessee Conservative. So we got 19 groups together. Thank you. Thank y'all. So we have 19 groups that came together and joined this movement, this opportunity to hear from candidates. So I thank all of you for being here. I know a lot of these people are watching online as the distance to drive is not necessarily ideal in the middle of the week. So before I get any other thoughts before I get started, I just wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank you for coming. I wanted to thank you for being a part of Tennessee Stands. If you don't subscribe to our email, I'd love for you to do that. You can go to tennesseestands.org and subscribe to our email. I send 1 email a week. Very rarely do I send more than that. And then follow us on social media so you can stay up to date on all the things political that we as conservatives are looking for in Tennessee. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce my friend, Monty Fritts.
Thank you. Thanks. I think I'm mic'd up.
Oh, yeah, it's on. All right, so I've asked candidate Representative Monty Fritts if he would start us out by just sharing a little bit. We want to know who he is. We want to know how did he get to this point where he's sitting on stage in front of 250 people in this room, several people online. I haven't seen the number yet, but we are all looking for who our governor is going to be. So Monty Fritts, tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
So I'll thank you, and thank y'all for coming out tonight. I would have to start to answer that question, and how did you get here? I'd say God's grace and his infinite sense of humor. But I have, my dear wife is probably here. She was running a little bit late getting down. I see her back in the back. Best part of me standing back in the back of the room, 42 years, my wife Denise. And thank you. Anything that you find worthwhile or meaningful or acceptable in me, God has used her to refine that into me. I'm nothing without her, just to be honest. I am, again, a husband. We've got 4 grandchildren. We'll meet the next grandchild sometime next month. We're excited about that in the Fritts house. 2 grown sons. Spent a career in most of it nuclear manufacturing, high consequence, they call it, nuclear manufacturing. Fuel for the Navy, weapons components, metal purification. Military for a little while. I joined the service. I had no intent of going to college out of high school. I thought I'd lay blocks and build steps and decks and houses and play soldier some. Hello, Brandon. And I thought I'd do those kinds of things, right, and play soldier some. Got the opportunity along the way to re-enlist in 2003. Got a chance to lead a good number of patrols in Iraq and a convoy security and PSD team. I had the opportunity to finish a few college degrees, work with some great people, manage $250 million budgets, $600 million budgets, or some portion of them. I guess outside my family, though, the best part of me, and I'll stop with that, with this, is God put people in my life that invested in me. You know, most of the time I hadn't really deserved it. They just picked me and decided they were going to mentor me along and feed into me some, and I'm so thankful for that. I can think of all the faces, the Jimmy Villareals and Gary Spradlins and just dear friends, Alice McMillan's, people who have taken the time to, you know, spend a few minutes with me and try to make me something better. So I'm really thankful for those gifts along life's way, Ann.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank
Yes.
you. And thank you for your service, for
Yes.
sure. Thank you. So how tonight's going to go is I've got 7 topics, and I do want to add that all 3 candidates received these topics on Monday evening. All 3 candidates were reminded of tonight's event, and all 3 candidates were reminded that they had a table in the back for each of them to put their promotional and marketing materials on. So we're going to do one topic at a time. We'll probably go for maybe 30, 40 minutes or so, get through as many topics as we can, and then we'll switch it over to a live Q&A, okay? If you need to take a bathroom break, feel free to you're in a living room setting. Make yourself at home. There's coffee, water, and bathrooms in the back. So let's get started.
Can I add just 2 things quickly?
Yeah,
I forgot.
absolutely.
First, if John does wander in, I'll move my hat.
That's true. Yeah, we got
And,
seats. Thank you. Yeah.
And I heard you introduce her, but probably one of the, if not the finest, one of the 2 or 3, I'm in favor of a couple of those state reps we have. But Michelle Renault, God has blessed you all to have that dear woman
Yes.
representing you. She prays for you. She prays over what she's going to do. She reads everything. She challenges me on things. I'm telling you, God has blessed you in Chattanooga to have that dear woman, so you'd all take care of her.
We're trying. We're trying to keep her in here. All right, so our first topic is, we're going to start kind of easy. It's a topic that pretty much every Republican can agree on, and that's immigration. So if you can show up our first slide, we've got a little bit prepared here. So Senator Blackburn, it is quite the list of bills that she co-sponsored or sponsored at the federal level that would support a Republican view of immigration. And then every slide you'll see, they're just alphabetical order. So we're going to start with Blackburn, Representative Fritts, he can speak for himself, and then Congressman Rose also has a long list of bills that he has supported to really bring immigration reform to our state. So I'd like to turn to you, Representative Fritts. A lot of legislation passed this year in Nashville that was very much pro-immigration reform.
Yes.
What part did you play in any of those bills, and were there any that you would have liked to have seen passed that did not?
So I'm going to sound really arrogant for
Okay,
just a moment.
that's fine.
And I'm not meaning to be that way, but we were passing illegal alien immigration that we got a chance to sponsor before it become popular in Nashville. So in 2024, we passed House Bill 1872, which increased the criminal penalties for illegals who commit crimes, violent crimes, or any crime with a deadly weapon in the state of Tennessee up to life in prison with no parole. We had to run that one twice to get it through. They put it behind the budget after a letter to some of the folks that do that putting behind the budget stuff. They realized that it was not going to be popular with Tennessee citizens if we didn't pass that. So I think that was first in the nation. I think part of that bill also had, and that was House Bill 1872 from 2024, it also allows magistrates or judges to consider residency status when issuing bond. And I think that was a first in the nation kind of thing. I think Tennessee ought to lead the nation in everything. We tried to do that with illegal alien immigration. That same year, while illegitimate Joe Biden was allowing our border to be flooded, we passed an Article 3, Section 5 Tennessee Constitution piece of legislation. Article 3, Section 5, Article 3 talks about the authorities of the governor, and Section 5 talks about times of rebellion and invasion, and certainly our nation was being invaded. And at that time, Governor Abbott of Texas was attempting to slow some of that down with barriers and fences and floating devices and all those. And Biden would send federal folks down to cut those fences and stuff. And so that law, it has some interesting language in it, that part of the Constitution, and it says that the governor has authority to deploy the militia and forces, if you will, if the General Assembly shall declare by law. And so I declared it. And we put it in paper, got it passed, authorized the governor to send up to a brigade-sized force to Texas to repel the invasion. Put $5 million behind it, and again, we got that passed. And you might ask, well, why did you do that? One, we need to send a message to the White House at that time that Tennessee was not playing with this invasion. I thought that was important. Our governors need to be demonstrate more resolve about that. And secondly, I wanted to send a message to those cartels that were trafficking in human beings, that we're going to take it a little bit more seriously in Tennessee. So I was really proud to get those started and kind of get the wheel rolling. We offered also legislation that would have required everyone entering their children into public schools to bring a birth certificate or some other form of identification that child was legally here.
Right.
And we didn't prohibit the child from going to school. We said that if you can't provide the documentation, you can go ahead and pay the TISA amount and bring them to school. Because not only are our policies of educating foreign citizens costing you money, they're costing your children opportunity. And we can't afford that. And so I think we led the way on all those. Unfortunately, we didn't get that last one passed. There's too many weak males in the Tennessee General Assembly. And but we certainly need to take those kinds of things on, and we did it.
So what would you say, when we hear immigration, we tend to immediately think of the Hispanic population coming over illegally. A lot of people confuse the Muslim population, and we tend to just loop it all into the same pot.
Yeah.
So while we're on this topic, what is your views, and what would you do as governor to that population?
Well, let me back up on that just a little bit, something you mentioned. So in 2023, several of us went down to McAllen, Texas to visit the border because I wanted to see if it was indeed as bad as what news sources were reporting. It was much worse. And McAllen, Texas, is a city of about 140,000 people there on the Rio Grande, bring their water out of the Rio Grande, and they took us down, the city leaders and some of the Customs and Border Patrol, to see one of the main border crossings. They offered us a couple things. They used the word lawless on the border. That's what a retired Customs Border Patrol sector chief told me. And he said the second thing is it's coming your way. And that prompted some of the legislation I just talked about. What they told us, most people in McAllen, Texas speak English and Spanish because there's a mama lives in Mexico and a son lives in the United States, and we want those 11 bridges to traffic with trade and legal trade. But they told us that the next most needed language for those illegally entering the United States was Mandarin Chinese coming in McAllen, Texas. So that got our attention on some things. I will tell you, I don't think we can stand nor be passive and be silent about the Islamization of the United States of America. So one of the things I failed to mention when I was talking, I'm a born-again Christian. I'm created in the image of God. I'm one of the lesser examples of that. There are many better. But he might not give me his good side, right? And the people that happen to come from Muslim countries and Muslim cultures are created in the image of Almighty God just like we are. As a matter of fact, Jesus took nails in his hands and his feet to save them from hell just like he did me. And so as a Christian, I don't have any right to hit them about the head and neck with my Bible and force them to bow their knee. There's coming a day when every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Christ is Lord. That's going to happen either way, right? But what we do have a responsibility to do is to protect our Christian heritage in the state of Tennessee and in these United States. I think, again, I'm not trying to be mean or insulting with that phrase. I'm trying to spur some of these men first who are not carrying out their oath responsibility. They're not practicing fidelity to their oath in defending our nation. I'm trying to prompt them to stand up and be men. And so many of them are so worried about a vote or a dollar that they won't say that Islam moving into the United States is a problem. I will tell you that it is. Again, not that person, not that little boy, that little girl, or my Muslim friends, I won't mention their names since we're recorded, that live in Iraq. I have friends there I'd love to see again. I love them. I'd like to see them go to heaven. I want to see the folks that attend mosques that we should have never allowed to be built go to heaven. What I am not, what I will not, what we must not allow is that culture, that pagan culture, to overtake our Christian heritage so that our granddaughters will be forced to wear burqas and our sons will be subjugated to Sharia law. That shouldn't be unusual for y'all to hear that. The two people that failed to show up for this tonight ought to be preaching that same message. Where are they? Who's giving them money that they're afraid to open their mouths about these things?
Thank you. All right. Okay. So, all right, I'm going to switch to another topic now that is equally should be consistent across the party, and that is property taxes. In Tennessee this year, Representative Fritts, and I'm going to have him talk about it, tried to pass some legislation that would have essentially capped the increase of property taxes. He's going to talk about that in just a moment. But as you can see, Senator Blackburn, we've got her quoted as saying, Tennessee ought not to have a statewide property tax, and we ought to be the freest state in the nation. If you look down on the other side with Congressman Rose, he also says he is very supportive of the Yes on 2 campaign to adopt Amendment 2, which we can talk about that, permanently preventing the state legislature from creating a statewide property tax. So Representative Fritts, fill us in. What did you try to do this year regarding property taxes?
Well, first let me start with it. I love those two folks that said that, but they're pandering to you for your votes. Before it's over with, after we vote this Amendment 2, Senator Blackburn will take credit for it 30 years from now. And so what they're referring to is adding to the Constitution, make constitutional change. Right now, your property taxes are a county thing, and it's in the Constitution to allow such. And what they're adding, and I'm in favor of that, is that the state can't issue a property tax. We're all in support of that. What they fail to address is that we are being taxed against unrealized capital gains today, and that was the bill that I carried this year. So that every 4 to 5 years, someone assesses the value of your property and reestablishes the tax base from which the rate will be drawn. And while most of our counties do pretty well at not taking that rate, that tax, what it comes out of your pocket, up a whole lot, we're seeing those values go up astronomically. It is a problem to be taxed against unrealized capital gains, I think. So we tried to end that this year, and we tried to drive a stake in the ground at 2020, or what you've paid for the property since, and make that what your taxes were assessed against. I thought that was fair. And then the second part of this property taxes, I think it's an abhorrent thought in Tennessee that we would have any citizen evicted from their home for delinquency in property tax, because that's just wrong. And so we took an approach at it. We tried to put it in at 10 years of residency, to try to get some move to get it passed, but it didn't do well in committee. I I'm not trying to be critical. I love many of the folks that Michelle and I serve with, even the ones that I think differently from, I love them. But the fact of the matter is, my friends, they think your money is more theirs than yours, and they think your property is more theirs than yours. We need to recalibrate Nashville, Tennessee to understand that God gave you those rights and that property is yours.
So on those lines, and this is off my notes, so I'm just spouting off here. So talk to us a little bit about eminent domain,
Okay.
and talking about, we will get to data centers in this, but I think that's an important thing that people don't realize. You think you own your property until the government comes in, they've taxed you astronomically for it, and then they have the ability to take it. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah,
and add, sir, excuse me for interrupting, if you are elected, what do you bring to the table in this conversation?
I think first I'll answer that. What I bring to the table a little bit different than the other candidates is I do think our rights and that property is a gift from God, that government needs to stay out of it. I think certainly there are times when we build roads, most of the roads, we're on the Tennessee River Valley, right? We had eminent domain exercised against us some years ago when we flooded the river. We all benefit from that today, right? I think where people get a little frustrated sometimes, and I know I'm in TVA town, so don't y'all stone me for this, I get it. But in Cheatham County, we were going to take more property by eminent domain to put in a gas plant when we have thousands of acres that USTV owns across the southern states now. Again, we've become too comfortable in exercising that. I hear Congressman Rose talk about making everything 8 lanes or 10 lanes or something. I think he's missing 2 things. That money tree that he thinks that grows in Nashville, they cut it down a long time ago. And secondly, if you straighten out the curves, I just come down Signal Mountain. Wow. I'm glad I didn't drive my extra cab F-250. It'd be hard to make some of those turns. I was a novice in driving. I learned coming down there. But if you straighten those roads out, you have to take someone's real estate to do that. And I think we should be very careful about how much we exercise eminent domain. There's usually it's going to come, it's for your safety,
right,
or it's for the children, or something like that. And there are cases, I think, that it's probably going to benefit us all. And so I don't know that that's an absolute 100%, but I think we've gone way too far in how we exercise eminent domain. Now, we have folks in the General Assembly that are standing up against private property ownership rights and the autonomy of the communities to force landfills into places like Scott County. And people that live in Jackson County, like Representative Todd, want to force Scott County to have a new landfill. Again, some of these people think they own your property more than you do, and we've got to recalibrate that.
For sure, for sure. All right, let's shift to something a little bit more dicey here, is school vouchers. So Republicans, I can find any Republican, even probably in this room, there are Republicans all across the spectrum of in support or opposition to school vouchers. So let's look at how our candidates have voted. Senator Blackburn, she supports school vouchers. She co-sponsored the Educational Choice for Children Act to expand education freedom and fund scholarship awards for students to cover expenses related to K-12 public and private education. She strongly supports the Tennessee EFS program. Congressman Rose also, he has been quoted saying, "I think Tennesseans are open to ideas about how we deliver school choice options to parents. I think they're willing to see that to try to figure out how to deliver those options effectively, particularly to lower income parents who otherwise would have no options. My view is we have to see this through and make it work." And I believe we have a quick video clip on this one as well. Maybe not. All right, let's move on. All right, so Representative Fritts, tell us what you think about school vouchers.
Well, my first thing I think is those words from Congressman Rose are that's about 40 words of saying nothing. And sounds like a politician, doesn't it? I voted no primarily on these education freedom scholarships, the vouchers. Thank you. I voted no because Article 11, Section 12 of the Tennessee Constitution, I think, prohibits that. The first sentence in that section says that we recognize the inherent value of education. We all recognize that, whether it's stretching 12-2 wire or laying blocks or learning to read and do algebra. It's all important. That second sentence refers to what we would call, I think, K through 12 today, and it says the General Assembly shall provide for the maintenance, support, and eligibility standards for a system of free public schools. I think that's a specific and restrictive statement. I think it limits us from being able to take public funds and put them into private schools. One of the arguments I get with that, because I talk to lots of people about this, and there are lots of different views on it, is they say, well, Monty, the Constitution doesn't say you can't do that, so we can. Be careful if you follow that philosophical view of the Constitution, because the Constitution doesn't prohibit me from wearing a Stetson into my political events either, but they can't make a law tell me I can't. Yeah. Does that make sense to you? That's a very slippery slope, malleable Constitution approach when people make that argument. And, I've promised to end the scholarships. That's going to make 35,000 people really mad.
Oh, yeah, it is.
And I'm going to borrow somebody else's white Dodge truck to drive back and forth to work because I'm pretty sure mine's going to get egged. But, and I understand that. I don't really have any ought with the people that have applied for that. My ought is with those who are constitutionally illiterate that voted for it. And further, the model that we've offered is fiscally unsustainable. And that was corrected some this year. I voted again against the expansion of the vouchers this year. And it's not, my friends, because I don't think you're free as parents. God gave you not just the freedom, but the responsibility to train up a child in the way it should go. Our founders recognized the inherent collective value of having a public education system, just like they recognized in Article 1, Section 29 of the Tennessee Constitution that you have a right to navigate the Mississippi River. Most of y'all don't exercise that right. But you have it, and they wrote that in there, I think, because they understood that our economy with the world was dependent on the Mississippi River. And I offer that, what seems like a stray example, just for this. We do benefit from having public education. How about we focus on making our public education excellent rather than incentivizing the decision of folks? And the last thing I would offer, and I love John Rose, I'm not picking on him, but your words are what your words are. And when he uses those words that we need to take care of the lower income, let me tell you what the redistribution of wealth model says. It says that we'll take money out of your pocket, Ann, and we'll give it to who we decide can have it. Is that not what we're doing with the vouchers right now? And that offends the hound out of people when I say that. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to be offensive. I cover one more thing on that question, because some of y'all I hadn't met before. And I don't want you to think I'm just that angry old guy sitting up there. It's not that. If I'm going to apply for this job, you need to know exactly what I think. That's why I think it's such an abhorrent thought that these other two won't show up and talk to y'all. Now, if you had paid a $500 or $1,000 a plate rubber chicken dinner somewhere, they might be there. And they'd ask you for a few more dollars. But why shouldn't we do this? Shouldn't your candidates for the chief executive officer for the state of Tennessee stand and ask your questions and tell you what they think? And again, I love you whether you're going to vote for me or not. You're fellow Tennesseans. I say that everywhere now because sometimes I sound so gruff, especially after I've been running pretty hard, right? Yeah. So the great liberty in feeling like God has called me to run for governor, I can just say what I think. And if you like it, you can vote for me. If you don't, I still love you.
Well, and I think with the school vouchers, I think people miss it was only this year that the state finally published the data to show the breakdown of scholarship applicants and recipients. And out of the 4 subgroups, the smallest number of applicants are of the low-income families. And it's because they simply cannot afford private school even with the voucher. Here in Hamilton County, you cannot attend a private school based on, with that $7,300 that the state gives you. You still have to pay money to get your children in these private schools.
Can go a little bit further, education, that's tremendously important. Part of the reason that we are constitutionally illiterate is by plan that we lost our model for classical education. We forgot that we can, in public schools, teach children about God and the Ten Commandments. We'd rather teach them about evolution rather than creation. I thought we settled that 101 years ago in Ray County, but we're still arguing about it. And we have our public school teachers issuing tests upon tests. I had a 4th grade teacher tell me last week that he spent at least a part of 60 days in preparing for, administering, or evaluating tests. He could have spent some of that time developing curriculum that makes little Tennesseans grow up to understand that being part of the volunteer state is the best thing in the entire world, and we need to spend more time doing that, I think. And one last thing, might be two last things on education. We've entered this thought process. Every kid's got to have a laptop and an iPad and a U-Pad and all that kind of stuff. I don't have any opposition to the technology, but we have allowed our books and our ability to read and report on something in pencil or pen and paper to be subjugated to a computer learning where the teacher in many cases is forced to just sit and monitor. She's playing hall monitor or he's playing hall monitor in the classroom while everybody's on their electronics. How about we go back to books? How about we practice Rickover's principle? How about we practice Rickover's principle that if you can't write it down, you don't understand it? I think that's important, and we need to get back to some of those things. And in many cases, the electronics have become a portal to hell, and it leaves a vulnerability. Just like our elections aren't secure with electronics, our children sitting in front of an iPad aren't either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right, we're gonna go a little bit dicier here. All right, we're moving on to, some people call it corporate welfare. The technical term would be economic and community development fast tracks. Okay, these are grants that are given to businesses to incentivize them to come into Tennessee. Senator Blackburn has publicly highlighted and promoted Tennessee's economic development successes. She has supported the Starbucks move to Nashville. Congressman Rose is actually campaigning against the Starbucks move, but he has also publicly campaigned on continued economic growth, infrastructure investment, and attracting employers to Tennessee. A quick just piece of info that I learned recently when studying and researching a little bit more about the Starbucks move is that the Tennessee State Funding Board is only made up of 5 people. 5 people are deciding who gets these grants. Governor Lee is on this board, Comptroller Jason Mumpower, Secretary of State. These are all appointments. And this really proves why who we elect as governor is crucial, because the governor is the role of the governor appoints the leadership that makes these huge, enormous budget decisions that are our tax dollars, that we are the ones paying for these incentives for these businesses like Starbucks to come in. Do I have 2 videos on this one? Here we go.
Senator, you mentioned the states. Your state has become a hot destination for businesses. The latest, I think, is Starbucks opening a big office there. I mean, on one hand, you got to love that, right? It's good to have business come to your state. I just wonder if you get just a little bit nervous about who's showing up at your door and where they're coming from and what kind of policies they've embraced in the past. Tell us about what's happening here.
Oh, yes, indeed. Tennessee, we have no state income tax, and we are one of the best places in the country for business. We have no state property tax, and so people are coming in, and you are seeing companies, whether it is someone like Starbucks or In-N-Out doing a relocation, and yes, they like what we have to offer, and they many times will talk about defecting from big blue states like California, Illinois, New York, and coming in for the diverse economy that we have in Tennessee. We're the best place in the entire United States to live, to work, to rear a family, and to create those jobs so your kids have jobs to come home to.
We ought to support the businesses that are grown right here in Tennessee. Those are the most secure jobs. When a Tennessean starts a business and builds it, those jobs are going to stay here, and we as taxpayers are not asked to pay for those jobs. You know, right now I think we're trying to recruit one of Starbucks headquarters to Tennessee. We're going to pay $30 million to bring one of the most woke companies in the country to Tennessee. And, you know, frankly, I think we probably ought to use that money to help Tennesseans start businesses rather than bringing a company to our state that doesn't share the values that we all have as Tennesseans.
All right, thank you, Ella. So we have heard from our two other candidates. Marsha Blackburn has supported the move of Starbucks moving to Nashville, and Congressman Rose has stated that he is publicly against the move. So Representative Fritts, what say you?
I'm against all of the corporate welfare. I would agree with Senator Blackburn on one thing. We do live in the best place in the world, and if she really believes that, why does she think we have to pay people to move here? That's that career DC mentality. If we've got to pass money around to be able to get people to do things we want them to do, liberty and less government will draw business and people to the state of Tennessee. It already is. And we shouldn't have to supplement the economies of these corporations to get them to move here. We are conditioning a behavior in them that when 8 to 10 years out, they have a balance sheet that doesn't look the way that it wants to, or they want it to, they'll stick their hand out again and say, we're thinking about moving to Sheboygan if you don't give me a few $1,000s. I don't know that anybody moved to Sheboygan, but anyways, they didn't mention things like part of the reason I was motivated to run for state rep, we spent $550 million so that the Titans can play indoor in Nashville. You all spent that. And I just think that's abhorrent. And so it's not just picking on Middle Tennessee. Last year's budget, part of the reason I voted against the budget, and part of what I ask about these two fine people that just talk, why don't you stand up on those budget items that are abhorrent and vote against the budget rather than take us to $39.33 trillion in debt when I looked a few minutes ago? And when you bring the Smokies into Knoxville from the what we call the Dollywood exit up where I live, 407, I think it is.
407, yeah.
Yeah. We spent $13.5 million of your dollars to move that professional baseball team into downtown Knoxville. That's not right. And so when you see the voting records of many of those career DC politicians, and many of them become career politicians, and after about 2 years, some after 2 months. Tell another story. Since they're not here, I get all their speaking time. Let's give them applause for not showing up. The first thing I heard after I got elected, I didn't know what to expect. Here I'm a country boy from Kingston, and I show up, and I'm all, they've elected me. What were those people in Ronan, Loudoun County thinking? And I got there, and I started to hear from all of the higher-up people in Nashville. They said, well, you have a new #1 job, Representative Fritts. And I said, what is that? And they said, to get reelected. No, it's not. That's not my #1 responsibility. My #1 responsibility, according to the Declaration of Independence, which is the anchor for our Constitution, both U.S. and state, is to secure your rights. And I am in no way securing your rights if I'm sending $550 million of your dollars to build the Titans a new stadium or $13.5 million to build the Smokies a new stadium. We need to stop that. We need to take those dollars and put them in infrastructure, not just roads, but water, sewage, solid waste, emergency services. We have a hard time with ambulance drivers in the state of Tennessee. Most of us think that's a necessary infrastructure. Yet we can afford to pay Starbucks because those 5 elitists, in many cases, make those decisions. My goodness, what are we doing? Isn't it time to yank a knot in that and stop it? Last thing, again, since John and Marsha have yielded me all their time tonight, we're at a break glass in case of an emergency moment in the state of Tennessee, I will submit to you. And I'm the only one that understands how to manage that. I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you. Let's see. All right, I'm going to pivot a little bit on this one because every time I talk about the Second Amendment from the perspective of Tennessee Stands and trying to educate, most people do not know anything about the Hughes v. Lee case. Could you educate us just a little bit about what this case is? What is the law? I actually just got heard again, 2 days ago? I listened to the appeal meeting with John Rose as the attorney. So if you could can you pivot from a forum debate style and just educate us? What is this lawsuit that the state of Tennessee is in?
So in many places, and particularly in 3917, 1307, don't remember ABCD, I don't remember which one, but there's a phrase used in Tennessee law that says intent to go armed. And so most of us Americans and Tennesseans in this room, we think that we're innocent until we're proven guilty. But under Tennessee firearms law, if you happen to be in possession of a firearm, you have committed a crime and you have to provide a defense to that crime because of those words, intent to go armed. That is backwards. That is inverse from what it should be in America. There's also a prohibition for carrying a firearm in parks, which was part of this whole lawsuit. So the plaintiffs in the lawsuit, led by a fellow named Hughes, started in Gibson County out in West Tennessee a couple years ago, and they filed a lawsuit against Governor Lee, against Attorney General Scarametti and Jeff Long, the Commissioner of Safety, and they said, we think the intent to go armed phrase and the carry in parks are unconstitutional. So that went to court, to the Western District Chancery Court for the state of Tennessee, 3-judge panel, and they declared indeed that it is unconstitutional. And that's a big win for us, right? I think, for our rights. Well, I was so frustrated because I started immediately hearing from some of my colleagues and from the Attorney General's office that they're going to appeal this. And I'm not picking on Chris Todd. I love him, but he's an idiot when it comes to the Constitution. Can I just be that clear?
You did, you said that.
Yeah, I have, so I guess I can. So I was on the phone with him this morning. He said, that morning when that come in, and he said, we need the court to rule on this to tell us how to write the law. The courts don't write the law. That's the legislator's responsibility. And so he and a bunch of others piled on with, supporting this. We sent several of us sent a letter to Scarametti and asked him to advise the governor not to seek this appeal. And so they appealed that verdict in that Chancery Court. So they're using your money to argue against your rights. That's a problem. This year, let me go just a little bit further with the whole intent to go armed. We started actually last year with a couple pieces of legislation that were what I would call comprehensive constitutional carry, because you don't have that in the state right now. And we were addressing things like these silly gun-free zones where 95% of all mass murders occurred in the last 50 years, if you look at crimeresearch.org. Taking on the intent to go armed part of it, the carry in parks, and campus carry. I think when you send your 20 or 19 or 18-year-old young man off to college, or your daughter, where's Bella Streval? If she was in here. Everybody say hello to Bella Streval back in the back of the room. So here's why we're doing that. Here's why we're calling this young lady out, because she's a young American for Liberty who made 4 trips down this past year because of House Bill 2514, which was our approach to put constitutional carry back in and to decriminalize campus carry for law-abiding, fine young Americans like that young lady. And they stifled her voice. We couldn't get our House committee chairman to even hear it. And the guy in the Senate, who happens to be from down this area somewhere.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, so Gardenhire.
Okay, there it is.
He who shall not be named.
Yeah.
He rolled that to 2027. Those are gutless, cowardly moves of career politicians who are more worried about maintaining their committee chairmanship than they are in securing your rights. And that young lady back in the back of the room has done all the right things to stand up and go to school and take care of her family and her friends and be a fine witness in Upper East Tennessee. She's not allowed to defend herself on campus, and she probably weighs 92 pounds soaking wet. Tell me how that's okay. Tell me why these gutless people like Chris Todd won't stand up and vote the right way. Here's where the sermon comes to y'all. You need to make them uncomfortable. You need to call them and write them and go visit them and challenge them on their oath and their fidelity to that oath in the Constitution.
So if you win the governorship, what will you change in Tennessee?
Several things. We will have many more conversations like that with big audiences. It'll make many of those people like Chris Todd and others very nervous. And because they are worried about their number one things getting reelected. And I won't get on him anymore after that. So I don't want to be inappropriate and tacky. I'm just telling you, friends, you need to go to these folks and give them a hard time. You do. As governor, I want to enforce unconstitutional law. I don't think we're supposed to. I think that like the 1989 prohibition on having a long gun, a shotgun, within arm's reach, and if you have ammo within hand's reach or arm's reach of that firearm, and you're not going to a range, going hunting, or going to get that firearm worked on, or you just purchased it, you've committed a felony in the state of Tennessee. You're a criminal. That's not okay. We shouldn't enforce those laws. Shall not be infringed is really crystal clear. Article 1, Section 26 of the Tennessee Constitution is really clear. And we'll see if we can't suspend this silly appeal. I haven't heard the verdict of what happened in court yet the other day. I knew it was being
still
argued.
Still at a stay, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that we need a voice for your rights. And the reason I'm so passionate about the Second Amendment, and the reason I'm getting on poor old Chris so hard and others about that, there's a whole list of them, Capley and Grills and several of them, is because they took an oath to defend your rights. And that same Bill 2515 that I just got y'all to wave at Ms. Bella Streval about, since we couldn't get it to move, we did a Rule 53, which is a not very often used procedural rule, to move that bill from where it was behind the committee to the House floor. And you all happen to have in your presence tonight 2 people that voted to move it to the floor, me and Ms. Renaud, but only 17 Republicans out of the entire body and 4 Democrats voted to pull that bill to the floor to be voted on. So I don't know if they don't care about Bella Streval's rights and yours. I promise you, if you hire me as governor, that's going to be a priority, because the way your government, your elected officials look at your Second Amendment rights is the greatest leading indicator of what they think about your humanity. If they think they can limit your magazine capacity, or you can't defend yourself, or barrel length, or gun-free zones, and all those things, they think you're less than them. I think God gave you those rights. And I think that there is no nobility in government in America nor in Tennessee. And I think that it is the responsibility of the elected public office holder to work for you to secure those rights.
Thank you. All right, we've got 2 topics left before we shift into a public Q&A. So my next topic, again controversial, is the data centers and the future of AI in Tennessee. Senator Blackburn has been, let me be very clear, data centers are going to be a good and important part of Tennessee's economic growth. Congressman Rose, on the other hand, wants, regulation with data centers. I do believe I've got a video of Senator Blackburn speaking about her position on data centers.
Marsha Blackburn. Let me be direct. Data centers are going to be a good and important part of Tennessee's economic growth, but we've got to be thoughtful about their placement. There are so many communities across the state who want data centers, but we've got to look at this placement of a data center up against the Nashville Zoo, which is a very important educational resource for our children, and it's also an important economic engine. So since there are so many counties that want these, communities that want these, let's be careful on this placement. I was a part of that board when the zoo was getting started. We're pleased with how it has grown to serve our community. Let's revisit this placement.
So Senator Blackburn is very much pro the expansion of data centers. One of her largest donations to Team Tennessee a few weeks ago, actually, was $1 million from Jeff Yass, who is a huge financial supporter of TikTok. He regularly donates to candidates and businesses who will continue to make building data centers a priority. And again, this is a spectrum issue to me within the Republican Party. There are Republicans who look at AI and the production of massive data centers as a good thing because it will put us potentially into that global marketplace, right? And there are Republicans that are similar and would agree with Marsha Blackburn on that. And then you have the flip side. Hamilton County, 10 minutes from here, is Georgia. If we're seeing all across the state of Georgia that Georgia Power Company is coming in and using eminent domain and taking people's property to expand these data centers. So Representative Fritts, how do you feel about data centers, and if elected, how would you regulate them?
I'm still staggered that Senator Blackburn thinks zoos are economic engines. If a zoo is an economic engine, it's like a 2.5 horsepower little crank start thing. Wow. At least she wants to protect the monkeys and the orangutans. There's just too much fun in that end. They should have showed up for this. Goodness gracious. So here's what I think about. We're electricity generation. We did some things. Butler carried a piece of legislation this year that for some of the AI type data center type stuff that they have to bring some of their power. That may help some. But we're at a deficit in electric production in the state. Those people like Congressman Rose who have oversighted, I think he's the caucus chair for the oversight for USTVA, have failed miserably over their tenure in Congress because we've shut down generating capacity like Bull Run Steam Plant a couple of years ago. It was 4.3% of the generating capacity within the state of Tennessee. And so I'm not sure he's our answer to nuclear energy. But we're already seeing rates go up some because we have a greater demand than we can provide, and we have to buy some electricity from Duke Power and from Southern Power, and so you have to pay the market rate for them. Silly decisions by people in the Biden and Obama administrations put costs on fuels that exacerbated the rate increases for us. So just for that's one reason. Secondly, water. If I understood the letter correctly from USTVA from last week or 2 weeks ago, 70% of the Tennessee River watershed is in a severe drought condition, and 40% in an extreme drought condition. And so worse than 40 years based on what I saw. And then I had someone go to the meeting for me the next day, and as I understood it, in 150 or so years of monitoring, and certainly TVA's not monitored 150 years, and we hadn't had pools of water 152 years, so it could be some apples and oranges. They said this was the fourth worst in Tennessee River watershed management. That concerns me for a couple reasons. Maybe we'll get into the geoengineering and how they may be stealing our rain out west in a minute. But to bring in an industry that could have both, either or and both, a quality and a quantity impact on our water might be a little bit ridiculous. The Duck River right now is being so drawn from for the growth in Middle Tennessee that they're talking about rebuilding a dam that had been torn down or building a pipe system from the Tennessee River to the Duck to be able to transfer water in it. I'm not sure that robbing Peter to pay Paul, with Peter being the Tennessee and Paul being the Duck in this case, is the smart thing to do. But another reason to be very cautious about the data centers. I don't think that we understand the field impact. I think that's what Senator Blackburn was trying to articulate there, and what impact it's going to have on our cattle, our crops, and especially our children, and the zoo. But I'll worry about those other three first. Yeah, Lord knows we don't want to hurt the economic engine of our zoos. Does that not make y'all say, wow? It does me. Anyways, so that's a problem for me. And here's the last part. It's where it gets a little bit preachy, Ann. I think that God gave even people like me, the least of us, 2 good brain cells that can work really hard to answer your questions and solve big problems. They're working really hard right now. You just can't see it. It's really busy behind these glasses. But I think that whether you, and someone like me maybe designs a shovel, and someone like my friend Brandon over there, maybe he designs a backhoe because it's got hydraulics and diesel in it. God give us the ability to do that. And perhaps someone like I won't mention these, I won't get you in trouble, Will. I'll mention Will Bolton. Maybe he invents the light bulb, he and Edison or he and Tesla or whomever. And then maybe one of our friends in Oak Ridge develops supercomputing. And all those are tools that God has given us the ability to develop. But if we ever allow ourselves to cross into that boundary where that we have a system or a group of systems that have replaced our cognitive ability to solve problems, we are in trouble. And I think that just as we had this frenzy for everybody has to drive an electric car, and if you drive a Tesla, I'm all for it. I'm in a hybrid. I'm not anti that. I just don't want anybody to tell me I have to. And it seems like we've gotten in this crazy frenzy now. If we got to build more AI data centers, I'd be all right with just let Tennessee stay where we're at, and let's let Alabama and Kentucky and Arizona figure that out, and we'll see what happens to them, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think there's probably a value for that, and I don't want to be a part of building a 21st century Tower of Babel. Mm-hmm.
All right, last topic, and then we'll move to the Q&A. I want to talk about MAHA as a whole, right? When you think of the MAHA movement, MAHA covers all the things. It covers medical freedom, vaccines, fluoride, pesticides. So quickly, just to run through each of them, I want to start with vaccinations. And there's a conversation to be had between COVID-19 and the actual vaccine schedule. We have to keep these two things separate, okay? So if you look at Senator Blackburn, the first two things I state here are she has publicly declared that COVID-19, the vaccine should not be mandated, okay? If you look at the far right, Congressman Rose has said the same thing. We should not be mandating the COVID-19 vaccine. But if you look at the bottom of Senator Blackburn's a column there, she did co-sponsor in 2015 the Vaccines Save Lives resolution. And she stated at the time, she said, "I'm both infuriated and deeply disturbed by the news that the United States could lose its measles elimination status. After 5 decades of the vaccination implementation and nearly 2 decades of eradication, misguided anti-vax trends threaten to reverse this progress and put our young ones in danger. We must do everything in our power to protect our young ones from dangerous, easily preventable diseases." And excuse me, that quote is from 2019, not 2015 is when she co-sponsored the legislation. This was a different piece in 2019. So is there room to say that Marsha Blackburn or Congressman Rose have shifted their stance on vaccines? It very well could have. I think a lot of Americans, myself included, to be totally transparent, have shifted. The more we know, the more we understand, the more we saw through COVID, it's like, wait a minute, time out, I'm wrong. I have to reset. And I think that's happening across our country, and it's being led by people like Michelle Renaud in our state, Monty Fritts as well, people that are leading to help us create laws that allow for medical freedom. So just to be clear, there are 2 separate conversations between COVID-19 and then the childhood vaccination schedule. Real quick, also in all this is the fluoride bill, which you co-sponsored with Michelle Renaud, that would have removed, and when we say fluoride here, no one's talking about medical grade fluoride that you get at the dentist. That is a totally different conversation. The fluoride in our water system is fertilizer runoff. And if you have more questions about that, any of us would be able to answer. We tend to be a little bit fanatical about the fluoride bill because it is truly insane. And so here we see that Blackburn likely would vote to not oppose it as she co-sponsored H.R. 416 that recognized community water fluoridation as a vitally important public health initiative, and there was no information on Rose to support either way. And then lastly, under MAHA, I know, I'm going to give you a lot to talk about. Sorry about this. All right, last thing real quick is the pesticides. This is another MAHA piece of legislation, that in Tennessee, the uniting of the conservative movement and conservative voices were able to stop this bill from progressing. It is one of the largest wins of the movement out of this session, and we were able to stop that from moving. Unfortunately, it did move to the federal level, where Congressman Rose was one of the people that supported protecting pesticide communities, or manufacturers, So, Representative Fritts, all the things. We're talking vaccines, we're talking fluoride, we're talking pesticides. It all falls under the giant umbrella of MAHA and medical freedom. Where do you land, and what would you do as governor?
First, I'd go back to that first slide and just offer that perhaps the hopelessly misguided acceptance of too much big pharma money influenced some of Senator Blackburn's answer. And then on that second slide, I would perhaps we're unable to determine is because Farm Bureau hadn't told John how to think yet. Just to be candid, just being candid, they should be here to defend themselves. I think, we started this, and I didn't realize what we were doing, to be honest with you. My friend, Representative Halsey, in the answer, not the MAHA movement. Okay. My friend Halsey handed me that geoengineering bill, not things I had ran on, to be honest with you, and not as effective as we would like it to be, but as I started to research, I realized how much we're being bombarded with chemicals and materials that we shouldn't be, how it may be affecting our water availability even this far east. I think that it's time that we, the people, need somebody that will speak for them and for the small farms rather than just the big corporate interest. And I think part of the key to that is looking at where these people have taken money. Mm-hmm. And it's not just John and Marcia. We've become common in just sticking our hands out and allowing people to put money in it, and they influence their votes, and that's not healthy. I think we've been fortunate to have a dissenting opinion come into Trump's administration with Mr. Kennedy that has helped with that. And he's been beaten about the head and neck for some of the positions he's taken. Janice and I carried, and there were several pieces of legislation up there I was looking through that we'd tried. I don't remember the number on this one, but it actually started with Senator Pody and I, mm-hmm. and he started the first draft. That autonomy to decide how you're going to be vaccinated and your children are going to be vaccinated is tremendously important. And I'd like to see us stop the use of mRNA and self-amplifying mRNA platforms in humans and veterinary in Tennessee.
And you tried.
We tried, yes. I met with a person the other day, I can't disclose his name yet, but is working on some things in that area, and his is more in alignment with some of the language you saw that after Janice picked up the bill in the Senate, some of the language on the Senate side was changed as a real biohazard and what the impacts are. And again, just because there's a wealthy global interest in some of these platforms, and it may be even something nefarious, doesn't mean that we've got to go full speed ahead into them. The whole statement that Senator Blackburn made about losing measles vaccination status, things are much different than in the vaccines, I think, than what many of us that have a little bit of gray hair were when we were kids and we took them. We've allowed something to happen. And whether it's profit motivated or control you motivated, I'm not sure. But we've seen not only in the computer industry, but even in what we call healthcare today, that there's a perpetuation of keeping you sick to keep giving you medicine. Mm-hmm. We've got to get away from that. What are we doing to our children? My generation, I'll take responsibility. I've been too busy with things I enjoy, and we've allowed things economically to deteriorate so that we have an affordability crisis, but we've also allowed them to deteriorate in our food supplies. What we eat and what the Europeans eat are different, and I don't want to model the Europeans in anything. But I think we can do better with our food supply and the dyes and the chemicals that we allow to be put in our crops. And I have two people. One of the persons, Amy is here, Bernadette's not here. Bernadette has been one of the biggest, mentors to me on that. And I did vote the wrong way on the 809. I trusted the people that were carrying it, just looking at the words on it. And this was the glyphosate bill. It was all about the label. I think I really come to the epiphany that Bernadette was 100% correct when it didn't go through in the state that the federal government picked it up. And you can see this whole, I'll use the word cabal of influence that's just going to tell us what we do. And that's not okay. And part of the passion you heard from me, and if it's inappropriate and me picking on another representative like I did a moment ago, I apologize to you, not to him. But I'm just being candid. I'm not trying to be ugly. But these people work for you. It's time they start acting like it. And it's time they start listening. And, there's a huge movement. So you've got some good folks that are leading that. Miss Amy's one of those. And I'm honored that they picked me to get this MAHA endorsement. I'm thankful for that. So let's try to pass on food and health care and decision making and farming that is a little bit cleaner and better for our children than what we've had. I think we should do that. We should never have a commissioner of health in Tennessee or any other department that thinks that it's their responsibility and authority to tell you what you must put in your kids' bodies or yours. It is their responsibility. It is their responsibility to provide you information and get out of the way and let you make the decision, I think.
All right, well, with that, thank you, Representative Fritts, for walking us through those topics. I want to switch to a live Q&A. Doreen, can I ask you to actually pull this mic up and stand here? And I think Leah is coming on this side, and she's going to pull. So we will have a live hot mic, one on this side, one on this side. If you have a question, I'd love for you to go ahead and stand up and get in line. I know, as conservatives, we like to talk. So everybody likes to talk. Democrats really like to talk, I guess. So I just want to ask you, if you have a question, I'd love for you to ask it. If you could just get to the question, that would be helpful so we can get as many people through as we can. And let's see, ladies first. I'd like to. Oh.
Could we invite John and Marsha? I'm sure one of them's watching this.
Oh.
Are they welcome to call in with a question?
They can absolutely call in with a question. If you're watching at home, you cannot call in with a question. This is a privilege of being in the room. But Senator Blackburn, Congressman Rose, I would love to have you respond. Actually, to any of my emails or contact to you I would appreciate that, but I'll take a phone call at 7:22. I don't mind.
I'm having too much fun with this.
I know. Now you're gonna get me in trouble. All right, let's start over here. Ladies first. The mic should be on.
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you. My name is Leanne Martin. I'm your East Tennessee field rep for the Tennessee State Employee Association, other known as TSCA. We are your lobbying association and your advocate for 46,000 state employees. My area is from Mountain City to right here in lovely Chattanooga. You all are my people, and I represent you in East Tennessee. Thank you. Our association believes that state employees is the backbone of this state. They get up every day and sacrifice in different departments, such as the Department of Children's Services, Department of Human Services, TDOT, a lot of departments. This past legislative session, there was an administration bill that was set out, SB 1873 and HB 2540. This administration bill had 36 sections that was detrimental to state employees. It took away sick leave. It took away their Step 3 appeal rights, an external review in case they were terminated wrongfully. It took away disciplinary action of freedom of after 2 years, it was going to be permanently placed in their record. This is what we called the monster bill. As of April 21st, the House voted 42 yes, 40 no, and 4 present not voting. Thank you, Representative Fritts, for voting no for this bill on the House floor. I would like to say that. This bill was also referred back to Calendar and Rules Committee. The legislation can rear its ugly head this come January and bring that bill back. If you are elected governor of the great state of Tennessee, what is your agenda for our great state employees right here that serve this great state every day? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leanne. That's a big question. So House Bill 2540 first, in case you don't know what it is, there's lots of things I want to unpack there, if I might.
Okay.
So it's an administration bill. That means that the governor's office wrote that bill and handed it to somebody to run it. I find that constitutionally violated. I think legislators are supposed to write that. The Constitution of Tennessee says the governor from time to time can make suggestions, but he's not really supposed to write bills. I think Leanne just mentioned that that bill had 36 or 37 sections. The Constitution requires that we address one thing at a time in our legislation. That's a whole lot of one things. And so I didn't see that bill until it come to our government ops committees. I'm on all the government operations committees, and we were able to send that out with a negative recommendation, which means that you didn't get enough votes to be able to say we support that legislation. And so that was, I thought, a big win. I didn't think we would get a further be able to stop it because it wasn't an administration bill, and stopping an administration bill, in my experience, has been tough, even if you think it's wrong. It come to the House floor, and there's a really great guy from up in Northeast Tennessee, Tim Hill, who's another state rep, and he spoke really passionate against this bill and how it was detrimental to the state. And I got a chance to speak on it on the floor. Let me tell you why I spoke against that. The 46,000, I've been quoting 43,000, so I've been wrong for 2 weeks. I'm glad you corrected me. I've led some pretty complex operations where I had a bunch of people working for me, hundreds of people working for me in big budgets. And I've learned in that work to evaluate everything through a safety, quality, schedule, cost paradigm in that order. Just like I'll tell you that I'm a Christian, constitutional, conservative Republican in that order, I'll tell you that when you make decisions in business, you ought to make them safety, quality, schedule, cost. If you do that, the cost and the schedule are taken care of by the first two generally if you put your work in, right? Part of that means that you listen to the employees. You don't let the monkeys run the zoo, but you back to Marcia. Yeah. Right. And if you do let the monkeys run the zoo, for goodness sake, don't put the AI Center too close to it. I'm going to have too much fun with that. Anyways, I think it's important for the employees to have a voice. I think it's important for the citizens to have a voice in what's going on, not just the 46,000 employees. I think that we've reached a point in Nashville, Tennessee, where many of those folks that are wearing suits and working in the office buildings have forgotten about the people in the work gloves, the hard hats, and the steel-toed boots. I think they've focused far too much on issuing contracts out in many of those departments, and some company does very well by operating the contract, and we've forgotten about the voice of some of the state employees. In everything I've ever done, from leading patrols in Iraq to managing operations at Y-12 or nuclear fuels, if you stop listening to the employee, doesn't mean that, again, you always have to do what they tell you to. That's inverse as well. But if you're not listening, if you're not giving them a voice, you're about to run the whole thing in a ditch. And I can tell you, there's many of the departments right now in Tennessee, I think, that are about to run in a ditch because nobody's listening to the people that do the work. So we're going to make sure that they have an ear, Miss Leanne, to listen. We're going to require an open door policy in the commissioners and the senior leadership offices, and guarantee that there's no retaliation, because the other thing I hear from state employees, if they offer a comment, they're afraid they're going to get in trouble. That's not the way this is supposed to work, right? It's not the way it's supposed to work. And that's going to include an open door policy with the governor's office, not just for the state employees, but y'all. I think my friend out in Middle Tennessee calls it a People's Day. Our Constitution calls out for an ability to issue a remonstrance or to speak directly. My approach at trying to help with that is going to be the first Saturday, the second Saturday, I don't know yet. Maybe it's 9 to noon or maybe it's 8 to 1, I don't know. But we'll open the doors in the governor's office. Then you working folk will have an opportunity to come sit down with the governor of the state of Tennessee and say, you're doing okay over here, Monty, but you're failing miserably over here. How do we fix that? I think that's important. I think that'll help our employees. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, John.
Oh. Hi, my name's, am I on? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, my name's John Baker. I'm a member of this wonderful church. My question for you is that there has been a reduction in the number of students in public schools. It's just a declining attendance issue. And that what the state did was what they call maintenance of effort, okay, where the school systems continue to get X amount of money. And recently, they added another clause that you didn't even have to have those butts in the seat, that you would still get paid for that empty chair. Is there something that you would do to correct that?
Well, I think one of the no butts in the chair thing that you mentioned, thank you for your question, we did that with the vouchers because if for those few, 20% or whatever, that left a public school to go to a private school to get the Education Freedom Scholarship, we agreed to send not only that TISA amount to the private school, but keep paying the public school as well. And we diminished greatly in an incentive for improvement. It's one of the many reasons why I think what we did with the vouchers just didn't make any sense. I really think that most people who are starting a business wouldn't do it on just purely per diem. And if school were a business, and it is as a model in some extent, you know, the community and the parents are the customer, the child's the product, not to make it sound too industrial, but then our educators and our schools are really the factories of learning, right? And I think that if we were going to do that well and smart, we would establish a base capacity with some sprint capacity in the education, make sure the curriculum's correct, and rather than base it just on that per diem head count thing, base that funding on what we need to service that community and the excellence requirement. And I think that's a much better model than what we're doing now.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
All right.
My name's Chris Obenberger, and I believe it was last year there was legislation that was passed that prohibited all the spraying that they're doing in the skies. Obviously, it seems to be a useless piece of legislation, unenforceable. I called some office. I was told, well, it's above Tennessee airspace, et cetera, et cetera. But what goes up must come down. So as governor, is there anything you can do prompt to enforce this legislation, fine companies? What are your thoughts?
So I wrote that useless legislation. That's House Bill 2063. It's not useless. I disagree with you there. That it prohibits geoengineering, so no permits be issued to conduct any of the geoengineering in the state of Tennessee. Unfortunately, our current governor has a problem with addressing that. We offered another piece of legislation the next year. I think that was 2024 that passed. We had another piece of legislation, House Bill 1112, which assigns specific prosecutorial authority to both the district attorneys, the attorney generals. It combined House Bill 2063, which is the one you're mentioning, which led the nation, by the way. We had Florida and many other states attempt to pass similar legislation based on what we did. We did start the conversation very well. I'm quite honest with you, brother. I'm more concerned about what I don't see than what we can see. I don't think every stripe in the sky is what everyone calls a chemtrail. It's the reason I wrote it as geoengineering. We wanted to keep that as broad as possible, everything from carbon capture to cloud seeding to stratospheric aerosol injection, which you probably would not see based on what the research I've found is. So that second bill also engaged Tennessee current code, 25-year-old code. I can't believe I can't remember the number. It'll come to me in a minute. 58-2-116A. And that is emergency authority for the governor of the state of Tennessee. And it says on an ongoing, it's a paraphrase, big long paragraph. It says that on an ongoing and continuing basis, the governor and his departments have the responsibility to monitor for conditions that might be environmental catastrophes. And it mentions specifically forest fires. It mentions specifically flood and floodplain management. And it mentions specifically weather modification. And so my intent was to tie all those things together. We got it through the House. It died in the Senate. That bill did. And it was worked hard against by the governor, the current governor. Here's what I think we need to do. I think we need a task force across the country. There's a lot of citizens concerned about what you just described, sir. When Congressman Rose was on WTN a couple weeks ago, and he was making fun of me for that piece of legislation, and I was off chasing stripes in the sky while he was trying to solve important problems. And I think he lost 100,000 votes in Middle Tennessee with that statement. But anyways, I think there needs to be a task force across the states and put pressure on the federal government, because I do think that we need the federal government's engagement. Marjorie Taylor Greene, when she was still in Congress, took some of those words from my bill, drafted them into federal legislation to do the same prohibition, which would have been helpful. Again, perhaps not perfect, but helpful. There's someone else that's picked that up now. I don't recall who it is. Burchett was a co-sponsor on that at that time. We've got the conversation going. There's much work to be done, and we need a voice in one of the executive department offices that will stand up and say, this is a problem, we demand it stop. Let me follow that, because I think it's a super serious thing, and that's one of those bills. That's one Halsey gave me. It's nothing I'd really tracked till I got into politics. If indeed the estimates are correct on the Tennessee River watershed and drought conditions, and if indeed my research is correct that Utah has become the largest cloud seeding state in the United States, and if they use, and they do, they use ground-based systems, drone systems, and aircraft to cloud seed to harvest, the words of the cloud seeding companies, additional rainfall. If indeed that there was cloud seeding the day before the tragic flood in Texas where so many children drowned, and if indeed many of us think that there was cloud seeding that took place over East Tennessee before Helene hit, so much so that we sent the governor a letter and asked him to do more sampling. They refused to do so. And I keep the records for those letters I sent. I think first engagement by the public's important. And sometimes my poor little legislative assistant will get the hell beat out of her because somebody will call in, she doesn't give them the answer they want, and they're mean to her. If any of y'all are doing that, you need to stop that. These people are trying to help, and so help us help you. And keep raising your voice, wear this current governor out, and then let's see if your next governor, if he's from Kingston, can do a little bit better about elevating that issue and making something happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Chris Long. A lot of people know who I am. I got a two-pronged question for you. One is education and the other is infrastructure. And the educational part of it is I had dinner with the lady that runs the foster kids program for the state about 10 years ago. And she warned me that there's a problem coming up that she was really concerned about. And what it is they go into these foster kids and they're not taught any life skills. And then when the money runs out, the kids are out on the street, so it's going to become a homeless problem. And I work with the Homeless Coalition around here, and then we're getting younger and younger kids out here that's coming out on the street. And we need to address that problem because it's going to escalate big time. So if we hire you as the governor, what's your stance on that? Can we put vouchers for trade schools for these kids and regular kids out here that can't go to college? Trade schools, I'm a general contractor, an architect and engineer, been in the game for 45 years, all right? We have hardly any good tradespeople. It's hard to find. And then ICE is taking a lot of them out. So we got to fill this void coming up for our infrastructure. It's very complicated in one way, but it's not. And it's an easy program to take care of. But we need to do that big time. And the infrastructure part.
Let's stop right there. You've given me enough question. I'll forget all that. We'll go to your second question in just a minute. Hold that. Let me see if I can answer that first part because I'll forget half what you said. I think that it's important that we back some of that CTE training back up into the high schools. Many of our high schools are doing some of that now. And I think we can develop a better platform. If we can teach the kid in high school the very basics of stretching 12-2 wire and running it into a receptacle through a house, then we can take them into a TCAT and teach them how to wire up the 200 amp box. And those are tremendous things. And as you know, if you're in that business, you got to build through that. And those are valuable life skills that the young people are going to take, even if they go into something else. Just the ability to be able to change out a light switch or run a three-way light switch, tremendously important. Cut a set of step stringers. Those are tremendous life skills I think that we need to put back into school. I think that we've lost an emphasis on some of that. Some of what I was complaining about earlier, in that we have, I'm told, in some cases, 50, 60 days of standardized testing requirements. Let's end some of those lucrative contracts that are probably contracts outside the state of Tennessee. Let's develop curriculum that we need for Tennesseans. Let's engage our schools and our communities. And rather than hiring a Penny Schwinn or a Lizette Reynolds that don't know beans from apple butter about teaching kids, how about we bring somebody in that understands how to instruct children in the state of Tennessee? And how about they listen to folks like you and to the parents and to the local schools, and not just our public schools, but our private schools and our home schools. I talked to a lady about this earlier today up in Sequatchie County, and don't misread this. I want to keep government out of our home schools. But I think that there is a reciprocal value in having the homeschool parent, or homeschool teacher rather, in the same meetings in some occasions with the public school and the private school folks, because that reciprocity of exchange of knowledge is valuable, and I don't think we're doing that very well now. Lastly, on the education, I would offer this. I think it's important that we train leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership, whether we're in the building trades or whatever it may be, mechanic or academic. It rises and falls on that. And I think that we're probably not doing a very good job of helping establish paths in our schools, not just for the academic, the science and math, but also for the CTE program, so that we can develop a smoother pathway in. I think K through college in Tennessee, we got a really good structure with our TCATs and our community colleges, so that we can send young people up into those. I think what we've got to do is grease the skids a little bit more, so that when they hit TCAT, they can build on what they've already learned. Now, what was your second question?
All right, my second question is infrastructure. All these cities and municipalities that you would be in charge of, is there any way that you can legislate them or be able to manipulate their purse on the infrastructure, paving roads and stuff, because they just let our roads get out of the way? They got their priorities wrong on different things and not taking care of our roads like they're supposed to. And the other thing on education, one quick thing.
Well, let's stick on Chris.
Can we get big pharma out of our schools?
Okay, thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, let me go back to the infrastructure thing. I think part of the problem that we have had with use of your dollars in corporate welfare is we have not invested in necessary infrastructure in the state of Tennessee well. I think also we have not managed the contracts. There's an old maxim that says, tell me how you measure me and I'll tell you what I am. If you don't get the performance measures correct, or if they're biased because you're friends with the person that has the contract or something along those lines, then you're probably not going to get that safety, quality, schedule, cost product that you're looking for at the end of it. I think we're going to have to rework those some. Specifically to your roads question, I think that we've horribly managed that. Now, I will tell you, mine is fix what we have first. You won't hear me talking a lot about adding 8 more lanes or 6 more lanes or any of those kinds of things other candidates are talking about. There may be a time for that at some point in time, but between the eminent domain and the fact that we don't have the money to pay for it, I think we got to focus on getting our performance measures on upkeep of what we have in place first.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for those questions. All right, let's go to this side.
Thank you so much for showing up tonight. I came because I have not done any reading on anybody, so I was coming to get informed. And so I apologize if this is out there and I just didn't know. I have 2 questions. One's very simple. Do you take money from any foreign lobbyists?
No.
Okay, awesome. Secondly, and I think you kind of started to go into this.
You know both the others do.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
all right. Yeah.
And so the second one is about homeschooling. I wanted to hear how you, where you stand on charter schools that are homeschool charter schools that might perhaps help with what you were just talking about in being able to bring homeschoolers and public schools together.
If I understand your question correctly, collective, like homeschool cooperative programs. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, like a public charter school, but they focus on homeschoolers. So, and they work in different ways, but sometimes they provide funding to homeschoolers. Sometimes they'll have teachers that meet with a family once a month just to see how they're doing with state standards. So they still are tied to state standards, but it is a public charter. So it's kind of combining it a little bit, and we don't have a lot of that here in Tennessee. It's stronger in some states, but not here. So I was kind of curious about where you stand with that, and I'm happy to educate too, if you have any questions.
Well, I don't want to be educated right now, but we will be educated perhaps later, because I can't think of anywhere we do that in Tennessee. That was going to be my question for you. I don't know that it's a bad idea, but I can make up something like a politician, but I can't give you a good answer. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. All right, let's come to this side.
Jennifer Hay from Knoxville
Hey, Jenny.
Nobility.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
What can be done about the abortion pill in our state?
So I'm the one person that signed up for House Bill 570 that's running for governor. There were some other good folks that signed up for that. House Bill 570, thank you. House Bill 570 brought equal protection under Tennessee law to the unborn, and that's absolutely necessary. Thank you. Unfortunately, Jody Barrett, who carried that bill, is a friend of mine, couldn't even get a motion and a second in the health committee to get it moving forward. They had decided long before they come in, and all the men on the committee, when he walked up to the lectern, you all have watched how this takes place, right? You come in and they'll say Representative Fritts with House Bill umpty squat, and somebody on the dais has to say, I give him a motion, and somebody has to give him a second, or her, to be able to have. They just dropped their heads and wouldn't even give a motion for that bill. I think that's the direction we need to go. I think that baby humans are humans. And I think that if you kill one, whether it's by pill or by scalpel, it is murder. I think that there were several of us, and I think at least 2 signatures on the letter from last year, where House Bill 533, I think, from last year, Representative Rutter carried that, and it guaranteed access to in vitro fertilization and contraception. And I will tell you, my friends, I probably wasn't fluent enough in vitro fertilization to understand I had an issue with it, other than there were no controls. So what we passed last year would allow any number of eggs to be fertilized and stored, kept, discarded, or whatever, and it's not a violation of the law. That's a problem. Equal protection under the law would help solve that. Secondly, it provided that you have a right to contraception. I don't care if you all use contraception or not. It's just not my responsibility to pay for it, and it's not your responsibility to pay for his in Tennessee. So when you pass laws like that guaranteeing a right, what you're setting up is that we're going to pay for it. Our health departments are already issuing that stuff. They had on their sites, Tennessee health departments were even issuing, and I'll be careful if there's any little children in the room, but it's the question, I'm going to answer it. Once that baby's been fertilized, I think life starts at conception. And we can argue about whether conception is the sperm hitting the egg or whether it's the implantation of the fertilized egg into the woman's uterus. Doctors can have that discussion, right? But if you have a medication that can prevent the implantation of a fertilized egg, you can also make the argument that perhaps you committed an abortion. And so what we did in that piece of legislation last year is we guaranteed access to that. That means you, the taxpayer in Tennessee, are paying for that to go out. That's an abhorrent thing. I don't think we should be doing that. I think we need to pass the equal protection under the law. I think we need a governor that when you bring these stupid bills up that are not pro-life, that will veto them. Because there is, again, I know there's at least 2 people in this room that signed the letter and sent it up to Governor Lee, pleading with him to veto that bill. And he signed it in late one night a few days later. It was a horrible thing. Thank you for the question. And again, you know who beat me up the most about House Bill 570?
Yes, I do.
Church ladies. Yes. maybe not this church, but church ladies beat me up the most because the left got out and said Monty wants to execute women. I promise you.
They did.
I promise you. That's what happens. You can. Wait. Let me finish. Let me finish. You get me off thought, and then we'll talk for 30 minutes about this. Be polite. The governor doesn't necessarily prosecute. Let me just go to that, right? That's the attorney general that does the prosecution of things. So let me go back to the question. One of the problems with this issue is you have folks that are trying their best to protect life, and if you don't answer questions exactly the way that somebody wants you to, it becomes a problem, right? We need to get on board with these folks that are protecting life. Because those of us that signed that bill, I can promise you, and it was the strongest pro-life bill praise come through the state, we got wore out. Because the left only takes one talking point, and they say, okay, if abortion is murder, then you want to imprison the women. Well, I got to tell you, friends, I'll just be honest with you. If you're complicit in the murder of a child, I don't care if you're the father, the mother, the doctor, or the pharmacist, you're complicit in the murder. We don't do retroactive laws in Tennessee. And that's an important point that the left leverage with that. They throw out red herrings on this thing, on all these things. So if we pass a law today that you can't buy Stetsons, right? Those who already have a Stetson haven't violated the law, right? Because you can't make that retroactive. And the left used that a lot. And unfortunately, some good Christian folks bought into that. And the common thing we heard was, I know Jody heard the same thing, well, you're mean. You're just mean. We can't do that. And I got to tell you, friends, and thank you for the question, ma'am, because it's a hard one, and we need to talk about that. We need to talk about it in churches. There shouldn't be one day a year that you talk about killing babies being wrong. It ought to be a routine thing. Murder is wrong every 7 days a week. And we've allowed that to take place. If God is indeed the same yesterday, same as he was yesterday, today, and forevermore, then if he punished his people 2,700 years ago for murdering their children on the altars of Baal and Molech, then when we murder our children on the altars of convenience, he will withdraw his hand of blessing from Tennessee. So I'm with you, sister. We got to stop it in Tennessee.
Hello, Monty. One of the major issues we are facing in this country and even here in the great state of Tennessee is leftist violence. After the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the networks that worked against ICE this past year and the lunatics that burned down our great cities in 2020 have continued to operate freely while our leaders have basically pretended they don't exist. Most of the solutions that I can think of are backed up in the Constitution to take care of these terrorists. I mean, after January 6th, they were hunting down 70-year-old grandmas that spat on the sidewalk in the Capitol. But every time we try to do something, some judge with a name you can't even pronounce tells us that you can't, and we walk home with our tail between our legs. So earlier you said, break glass in case of emergency. Well, what will you do to fight the left, and how will you use your executive power to dismantle those leftist organizations? Will you ignore these activist leftist justices or even investigate them for their complicity? Andrew Jackson family said about an unruly judiciary, they've made their decision, now let them enforce it.
Read that last part again. It's really garbled. I didn't hear the last sentence. Read that last sentence.
About Andrew Jackson? Mm-hmm. They said, the judiciary made a decision, now let them enforce it.
Okay, I got you. I thought that's what you're saying. So give me your question out of that again one more time, because I got all the reading and the statement, so give me what's your question.
So I said you would break the glass in case of emergencies. What would you do to fight the left and these organizations that are leftist terrorist organizations, and how will you use your executive power to dismantle those organizations? And will you ignore the activist leftist justices that are complicit in this ongoing mess?
Yeah, so I think one of the first things that we have to do is stop funding through non-governmental organizations and nonprofits some of those organizations that are doing that. I think that there are many cases that we should be seeking, and much of that is from the Attorney General, seeking prosecution or civil penalties for some of those organizations that have been bad actors. And I think there's not been a willingness to take that on. I can't point one to two or point to point on these, but I suspect we've allowed so much money to come into politics, it's become so polluted that everybody's associated in a donation somewhere, and we have a hard time doing that. We have a hard time just holding the line and enforcing the Constitution. So that Article 1, Section 3 that I mentioned a few moments ago that we did for an invasion, it also talks about a rebellion. And, we had a criminal rebellion in Memphis, Tennessee. I think we probably have a criminal rebellion in other places across the state of Tennessee. And I think the governor has the authority. The governor in Tennessee, unfortunately, over especially the last 8 years, has assumed authorities he does not have. So I think that's even more dangerous. That's the most dangerous thing that you can allow to have. So you can't give yourself a power that the people have not already given you. But I think there is an authority to be able to go after some of those rebellious criminal activities. We had folks that were protesting on the Mississippi River Bridge, if you'll remember, a couple years ago, and blocking traffic. We've carried some legislation to try to help deal with that. I think what it really comes to is you just got to arrest those people and take them to jail. And if that's the state forces doing that, our sheriffs have to do the same thing. Our sheriffs are the high law enforcement agency in the state of Tennessee. There's been some trends, I think, that are negative in the state, that we've attempted a centralization of law enforcement power in Nashville. I'm never going to be in favor of that. The authority's got to maintain first with the sheriff. But I do think there's opportunities. We've hired so many state employees that work either in Homeland Security or even in the Department of Safety. I think there is room to have a task force of people. Specifically, the first thing that comes to mind for me is the human trafficking. I think that that's an active industry in the state of Tennessee, and I think we need to cut that completely off and dehead the creature that is driving that. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to be here. I have an easy question regarding Islamification, and that is a real easy one, right?
You're setting me up.
Yes. What would you do as governor to limit the influence of this political ideology that masquerades as a religion in a country where they are absolutely opposed to the U.S. and the Tennessee constitutions? I find it absurd that Muslims can even take an oath of office in this country when they simply cannot put the U.S. Constitution above their Sharia law and their text. So
I agree with you completely. I think that Islam is incompatible with both our Tennessee and our U.S. constitutions. And I'll read something. This is indicative of what I would, as your governor, would. I'm not going to read the whole thing, I promise. It's 5 pages long. This is what I sent to Governor Lee, and I give him an example. I sent this on June 9th. Those of us who grew up during the Cold War understand that there have always been foreign enemies seeking to extinguish the light of liberty that America holds out to those yearning to be free. The events of September 11, 2001 were a horrifying reminder that those enemies still exist, and we've taken steps to protect ourselves from another direct attack. However, as you can see from the enclosed congressional findings, and that's the pages I won't read, there are Muslim organizations operating in the United States that want to eliminate and destroy Western civilization from within. The United States is their primary target precisely because the concept of liberty and individual freedom that our Christian heritage promotes threatens the control that they wish to exert over the world as a whole. And here's where the second part to answer your question I wanted to read to you, and then I'll just talk some 2 more paragraphs. With the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the subsequent dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, most Americans believed that we had defeated communism. However, there is a growing evidence that suggests that the Muslim organizations are partnering with communist factions to bolster their numbers and collectively work against the liberty and the rights of the individual that our founders enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and our Tennessee Constitution. Therefore, it is incumbent upon the leaders of this nation and of the state to serve as watchmen on the wall, calling attention to the danger that the mission of these groups present to us as a people and our way of life. The Council of American Islamic Relations, CARE, is one of the organizations that the federal government has identified as having connections with Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, and have already designated as terrorist organizations. There is also mounting evidence that the AMAC, the American Muslim Advisory Council, which operates as a nonprofit, back to the answer for the young man's question earlier, within Tennessee, has official values and goals that are closely aligned. Rather than read the last question, what I basically am asking the governor to do is declare them an enemy of the state of Tennessee, a terrorist organization that equips us to be able to do some things a little bit differently than what we're doing now. I think we've got to do that. I think it sends a strong message for us, and I sent that again on June 9th. I sent it out to some media sources. I may not have said this a moment ago. If I did, if I'm repeating myself, remember and be gracious. I got home at 2:30 this morning, and after I speak 4 and 5 times a day on some days, I sometimes sound like that old guy that repeats himself, so forgive me with that. But this whole Red-Green Alliance is a great threat to us and our generation. But it is even a greater threat to our children and our grandchildren. And it's going to be time for men of courage in the United States and the state of Tennessee and women of conviction to stand up and say, no, we're not going to tolerate that. And for those of us that are Christians, to love those human beings and present them with the gospel of Jesus Christ that they might be saved. But to never allow that ideology to overtake our Constitution and our way of life, nor our Christian heritage. All right, so you can go back up to the microphone if we're going to play this game of asking questions again.
Well, and I'm going to stop you because it's already 8 o'clock. I'm going to do 2 questions left. I'm going to do Brandon, and I'm going to have you because both of you were sponsors of this event and joined us. I'm sure Monty will stay and will answer questions, but I do want to get us out quickly. So go ahead, Brandon.
So there are a lot of homeschool families in here. I know it because I attend this church. Like, we're spending roughly $170,000 over 13 years to graduate functionally illiterate kids in Tennessee schools. Our proficiencies are around 30 to 25%. I look at the laws that they passed in the legislature here recently, and it's like you can't molest the kids, you can't have sex with them, you can't indoctrinate them. Who wants to send their kids to a place, if there's a restaurant that's like you can't pee in the soup, you can't slap the customers. If you knew they were passing that at a restaurant, you'd be like, that's probably a restaurant I don't want to go to. So that's why we homeschool our kids. Half of my tax money goes to this broken system that is so awful, I won't even send my kids to it, even though I have paid for it. And what would your position be on some kind of, not a rebate, because I don't think giving the government your money and then them giving it back always comes with strings, but some kind of tax deduction in property taxes. You could send in some paperwork, check a box on your form to the assessor, and half your property taxes go away to help you actually educate your kids at home. And so if your kid's not consuming the resource, you just get to keep your money. Would it be a lot? No, but it doesn't cost a lot to homeschool your kids. And that's what my wife does. I don't do it. I would say I do it. She does it. And so what would your position be on homeschooling? And as a follow-up, the Tennessee legislature has not been very accommodating to homeschool children. The bills of just like that you can homeschool your kid without government intervention failed in the House because we had activist judges, some of which are in our community right here. Rob Filial sends a letter in and it's like, well, what if the kids are being molested or beat up? We'll never know. Well, they're being molested and beat up because we report on it every week in government schools, which the legislature has complete oversight over. So it seems like the legislature is not minding their own store. And even you look at the 1800s, like the curriculum has been so watered down. Like it used to be like 4th, 5th grade, you could do what now is competency after 12 years. And so what would your position be on some kind of tax relief for homeschool parents since they're not impacting the government schools, but their money is going to them?
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. I think there's a couple things there. If you get into the property taxes, I think if you were going to avoid some property taxes now, I think it would require, just for education, I think it would require a modification to the Tennessee Constitution to do that. I think that if the average Tennessean makes $50,000 a year, that's average from West Coast up to the Smokies, And we pay in $4,500 to $4,700 on average in state and local taxes, and $15,700 in federal taxes. First, the problem is you're working up into May to get to the break even for what you've paid after the taxes, and I understand the frustration with that. I think there's probably some way to do that. I don't have an opposition to those dollars falling to kids, Brandon, but I do think we'd have to change the Constitution to be able to do that. I think that the big solution has to be that we fix the schools. And yeah, I get you. I heard your whole big statement about things, but I think there has to be a fixing of schools. We have a responsibility to do that. And I think that that's going to require an excellence focus in the schools that we hadn't had. I think it's unfair to probably paint all schools as failing. I think part of the reason the Lee administration did that was part of their propaganda push to be able to get the vouchers in place. I think that. I saw it happening. And I think that there are some schools in the state that do better than others. There's certainly some that do much worse than others, right? I think parental engagement is tremendously important, whether you're homeschooling or public school. And I think that we have, in many cases, we've allowed processes and thought processes in our public schools that many parents, unfortunately, some parents use school as a daycare program. And some of those young people that are greatly disruptive, and I'm just talking about violently disruptive, we don't do anything with them because we've got, somebody asked the question about the per diem payment, because it's money to keep that butt in the seat. And meanwhile, your child's missing a learning opportunity. We've got to stop tolerating that in Tennessee, and I think that's part of the push toward excellence. So, summary answer, I'm not opposed to those things, but I do think we'd have to modify the Constitution to get to it.
All right, last question.
So my name is Bella Strebel, and I'm a state chair for Young Americans for Liberty. But first of all, I also want to thank Monty. Not only does he come to these debates as the only candidate, but he also took the time out of his busy schedule last semester to come to my school and speak to college students, and that was just really, I just really thank him for that. So, but as many of you know, I'm the crazy gun lady who's been fighting all semester for our campus carry bill, but I just graduated from East Tennessee State University, which is currently the most liberal school in Tennessee, and I've tried to share the gospel. I've been told multiple times, I hope you get shot and killed, I hope you get raped. What is your advice for young people who are scared to get involved and are scared to be bold in their faith because of what people are going to say about them?
Bella, can I ask you, just in case somebody missed what you were saying, make that restatement about what people said to you, because everybody in this room needs to hear that.
So I've been told multiple times, hope you're getting shot and killed, I hope you get raped on my campus, just for speaking about what I believe in and the truth of the gospel.
This is because this young lady has stood up for Christ, and because she has said that your rights come from God. She's heard that in her schools. And so when you ask yourself the question, shouldn't we have campus carry? Shouldn't this young lady be able to defend herself? That's an absolute yes. And demonstrated great courage. So now ask me the question again, because it amazes me every time you tell me that story.
So something that frustrates me is so many young people I talk to, they don't know what's going on in their communities. They're not, talking to their mayors or their representatives. They just have no clue what's going on. They're not getting out and voting. In my county, only 7% of the people ages 18 to 25 went out and voted. So what is your advice to young people who are scared to get involved or just don't think that it matters to get involved in politics?
I think first, don't allow what has become the seniority system of politics to discourage you from getting involved. I think that we have allowed in many cases, and I think we Republicans, I'm a Republican, have been much worse about this, that you have to get so many years in, you have to earn your stripes before you can get involved. And they say things to young people. I see it at these political events at the $200 plate rubber chicken dinners I was talking about earlier. Am I right? You've been there, I know. You'll have people young people that are being paid some small amount to slap stickers on you as you go in, and they're told, fetch me a cup of coffee or slap a sticker on everybody that comes in the meeting, but we don't have time to listen to you. Because if they have an idea, and I've had other young people say this, not Bella, let me be clear about that. But other young people have said things like, I have good ideas, but I can't get anybody to listen to me. I want to get engaged in the local politics, but it's like, well, you're too young, you don't know anything. They have forgotten that Jefferson was a young man. We better start embracing and listening to these young people, because nature hates a vacuum. And if we allow ourselves, just because we happen to be in our 60s or 70s or 80s or 50s or whatever, to say, well, she doesn't know enough to be able to help any, we're going to turn that spigot of wisdom off, and we're going to further exacerbate that voting issue that she talked about. So I think one of the first things that we must do is recruit your input. And so lots of young people, not just Bella, very active in fighting for the gun rights thing. I've seen that in Nashville. They come down for the life. That's House Bill 570. And they stand there and they have their voices heard. And in many of them's case, they were driving from Kingsport and Johnson City all the way to Nashville. And so let's encourage that with them. And I think don't allow people, you've heard this before. I've said this to her before. Don't allow circumstances or people to dictate what you can and cannot accomplish in life. Charge hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Bella. All right, well, production team, can you throw up my slide with the Tennessee stands and the information? I want to make sure that you leave with a contact for me. This is my email, Ann Lowry. It's ann@tennesseestands.org, and as well as my personal cell phone. If you're leaving this event tonight and there was a question you had that you weren't able to ask and you're not able to communicate to Monty while he's here, email me, call me, text me, and I'll make sure to get your question asked. And then, too, if you walk away thinking, man, that was a great event, I should maybe give them $5. I'll take it. So if this is the QR code to our website. I'd love for you to get involved in what we're doing across the state and holding opportunities for voters to get educated. Our election is upcoming August 6th. Monty's on the ballot, Michelle's on the ballot, Will Bolton's on the ballot. We've got the other local people here in Hamilton County. In order for the governor to move the needle, we have to have conservatives in the House and in the Senate. So it's not just Michelle that we need in there. We've got to get more people elected so we can continue to conserve conservative values in Tennessee. So get out the vote, August 6th, my email, my cell, QR code. Any feedback, any contact to us is welcome. And Monty, I'm just so grateful that you would give us the time, and please make sure you either speak to him after. He does take contributions as well. He is 100% funded by individuals, and I saw a ministry was on your list. A ministry out of Maryville, Tennessee is on that list as well. So in order to move the needle, you need to invest in candidates. There's 3 candidates out there. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. You pick one, you support one. But at the end of the day, we've got to move the needle on conservative values, and I'm just so grateful for you all, and thank you.
Can I say one last thing, closing?
Yes, of course.
There is no easy button to get us out of the position we're in. There is going to require work. Part of the reason we did this prayer resolution a few years ago is because I come to the epiphany of thought that we can't legislate ourselves out of the hole we're in. We can't spend ourselves out of the hole again. We prayed all over the state of Tennessee asking for a move of God, didn't we, Jane? And we better do that. There better be a move of repentance in the state of Tennessee, or we're in trouble. And that's going to start first with us men. And secondly, whomever you elect, pray for them. I've already said, I'm asking for your vote. I'm going to still love you if you don't vote for me. But whoever gets it, pray for them that God will give them wisdom and discernment. I think I'm going to win. I'll be quite surprised if we don't. But pray and stay engaged, and then also help. I'm going to speak again. Michelle's gone. I think I don't see her sitting over here. I see how much she works, and others do this. When there are a few that they're reading bills till 11 and 12 o'clock at night when we're in session, because they're seeing 1,500 items or 1,200 items or whatever the number is that they have to read and digest. Help them. Be part of these organizations that review bills and send them in. Get your input and help. It is a monumental task, I promise you, to do what folks like she is doing and what Will Bolton may be doing. So make sure you're helping these folks out. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Good night.